Tommy Burns here with the High Impact Fasting Experience. And I am here with a very, very special guest. This is my man, David, also known as David Kill the Giant on any platforms that you follow him on. And the reason I say this is a special guest for me is because this is the first person I ever walked through a full 30-day water fasting experience. And we go back a few years, actually pre-COVID. You know that at the time of this recording, it's just January, the end of January 2024. So we go back well over 4 or 5 years now. I think it was 5 years ago that David reached out, saw one of my videos after a 30-day water fast that I had been on. And at that point, I've been fasting for probably about a decade or so, or close to it, and just sharing my experience. And then after the 30-day water fast, Dave was one of the people that reached out and said, "Man, not only do I want to want your guidance or want some answers to questions, but man, if you could actually kind of help me walk through this process, like hold my hand through this process, I would appreciate that." And so David hired me, man, and we walked through the process and had some incredible insights. And so, David, before I go any further, thank you for joining me today, my man.
It's great to be with you, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so, man, I kind of went over an overview of how we met, man. But what was your experience like leading into that experience of reaching out and connecting, and then going from there?
Yeah, so I've had a background where I've known about healthy eating, fruits, vegetables, lean proteins, things like that, but have dealt with compulsive overeating for large parts of my life. So I was getting to a place where I was starting to get worn out with the process of just going back to these junk foods, fast foods, high salt, high MSG, lots of chemicals in the foods, lots of sugar. So
Mm-hmm.
I was getting to a point where I was just starting to feel overwhelmed with it, and I knew I needed some kind of guidance. And I started researching about fasting. I had done some juice fasts before, even to a pretty extensive level. I'd gone as long as 100 days. But that's much different than water fasting, as you know. So I felt like it was time to reach out to somebody that maybe knew what they were doing. And I came across your video on YouTube, and the rest is history.
There we go. There we go. So that video, of course, I always tag it below for people who have not seen it yet. But that was after the 30-day water fast. Lots of insights that I had at that time, and I just kind of lay out an overview, a rough overview of uh, the journey for anybody who want to take it up. You know, and since that time, of course, every year that I've shared about fasting, I've gotten questions about it, or people wanted to inquire about certain portions of it. But like I said, David was the first person that ever reached out and said, "Man, listen, can I actually, could I hire you to hold my hand through this entire thing?" And that I was kind of doing that with people, but it set off a chain reaction of events. And in that, what it set off is that I knew that this was something that people wanted, because the amount of questions I would get every single day in social media after hearing about fasting experiences, but also it was something that people were um, they were willing to go the distance with if they knew how to do it, and also knew that it was safe for them, and knew that there was somebody that could support them in the process. So in your experience, David, you know what what was the most empowering things that you experienced from actually having somebody like myself walk with you through that whole process?
Well, you're probably so familiar with fasting at this point, Tommy, that it doesn't seem daunting to you to
No.
do something like that. But to me, the thought of not having food for 30 days just it seemed downright unhealthy and scary. So
Hmm.
it was empowering to have somebody that had been there before, walk you through it and say, no, it's going to be all right. Your body's going to do this. It's going to do that. We don't really go by feelings. Here's what we're looking for. So that was the most empowering part for me. I think just understanding, okay, this is a little more tangible and doable than I thought it was. Talking to someone that had been through it kind of helped me like take that next step.
And love it, love it. And I normally share with people the overview of, you're going to go through about 3 different stages throughout your fasting experience, right? First is going to be the physical detox. The next thing is going to be the mental and emotional detox. And then the third level is just spiritual connection, right? If you make it to that third level, that means that you've cleared out pretty much the things, the stuff that's in a body that could be blocking the way of any type of flow, not just physiologically, but even psychologically and spiritually that could be happening. And so you get a chance to connect and have these moments of what we call like downloads and ahas uh, throughout this process once you reach that level, right? But in those first, phases, that first phase, I always talk about the physical thing. I know for me, it's different for different people, but because I'm a strength athlete that eats a lot, normally I don't get a chance to, start. I just don't plan out coming off and starting to clean up a lot of my diet before I start fasting. Normally I get inspired and I just start, right? And then once I start, I experience those first 3 days are normally the hardest for me in that physical process, as the body's ridding itself of food and you know losing glycogen and all that type of stuff. And before by day 3, I'm just like, okay, I'm ready to be done, right? And then the body does what it does, converts over energy sources, and then I'm like, good. For you, what was, if you could recall, what were some of your hardest physical moments of that first stage or that first level?
Yeah, so I was coming from a place where I was binge eating before I started. So I
Mm,
was going to Taco Bell on my drive home from work every night at the time.
yeah.
So I was calling you from a pretty desperate place. I was overeating. I was probably averaging 5,000 calories a day. I'm
Mm,
5'8", 190 pounds, so I shouldn't be eating that much. You know what I mean?
mm,
So coming from that, there was certainly some withdrawals that I went through first 3 or 4 days. And I think it took till about day 8 for me to not feel terrible, to be honest with you. And
mm,
I'm
mhm,
coming from a place of I was not in a healthy place physically. So there might be others that might be a little bit better in their response. Their body might respond quicker and convert things quicker. Um, but I'll tell you, after the first 8 days, I think it was by day 8 or day 9, I started feeling euphoric. So
there we go.
I, I felt incredible from about days 8 to day 26, 27.
Gotcha.
So there was a switch over, and then I had a clarity of mind, peace of mind, and we were able to get into some of the deeper stuff emotionally once we got past the physical stuff first.
Perfect. And that's exactly what we're leading into. Like the second phase, I share with people, once you get through the first phase is your body just saying, okay, I'm out of my comfort zone. We're not doing what we're normally conditioned and programmed to do. And I'm going to make it hard for you. I'm going to make it really hard so that I could make you go do what we're used to doing and having this food, right? And once you get past that stage and that level, it's like, okay, I need to figure something else out. And all of a sudden, all of these emotions start to come up. These emotions of things that were either unresolved or issues that we had within ourselves, whether it was insecurities or past events that just didn't go right. And because you could be, so when you're fasting, you could be surrounded by a large number of people every day, but because you're in this fasting journey, it's almost like you're on a personal retreat, even though you're around people every single day, and you're in your head all day long. And so those things start to come out. And not only do they come up, they start to yell at you. They start crying out very loudly. And in that phase, what's happening is your emotions and your emotions, your mind is starting to make you say, okay, if we can't do it physically, we're going to do it mentally. Let's go get some food. Let's do what we normally do. And you have two choices in that place, right? You could do that, or you could actually take the time, ponder, sit in that place, and then you could go resolve those unresolved things. You could actually take out out of the bin, the laundry basket of unrepressed emotions and experiences, and actually go do some things about it. And sometimes you can't do anything about it. Um, because maybe, you know, you can't do it with another person. Maybe they passed on, or maybe the phase in which you could do something about it has passed on. And sometimes you can. I've had to make those calls several times over the years of fasting that I've experienced, because I knew that if I didn't, it would just sit on me, right? And it would just be there, and I would regret it at some point. And then there's been times when I just had to say, you know what? I can't do anything about this. I acknowledge it, and I forgive myself for it. And I thought I forgotten, you know, I forgave myself before, but it wasn't like that. It came up because I just fully just wanted to move past it, get through it, but I never handled it.
Tommy, I think I lost audio here.
Can you hear me okay?
I got you now. Yep. Sorry about
Okay. Gotcha. My little mic went out.
that.
Okay. All right. What was one of the last thing you heard me say?
You were just sharing your experience about emotionally and mentally what you were kind of going through those stages of the fast. So,
Gotcha. Okay. What were some of those experiences for you, and what was hitting you at that phase?
yeah, well, it's easy to look at eating the wrong foods as more of just a habit, but really it's an emotional thing. So it's starting with our mind, our soul, our emotions. So for me, it really put me in a place where I had zero coping mechanisms left. And I
Mm,
had to I had to just look at myself and say, what's going on here in my thinking? Why am I viewing these situations the way I'm viewing them? Why am I viewing myself the way that I'm viewing myself? And it really put me into a place where food could no longer be a coping mechanism for that. And it allowed me to connect with God in a much
mm,
more real way, an authentic way.
yes.
And you're heightened, like you're on hyper alert, man, when you're fasting. Like you're responding to emotion and feeling in a much deeper way than you typically would.
Hmm.
So it's making you just get past the surface and go deeper. But at the time, I think I was in a relationship that just wasn't me. God bless her, great person, just wasn't a good situation. I knew I needed to get out of it. So fasting kind of helped me pull the trigger on that and say, okay, it gave me clarity on a situation where there was confusion. Same thing with work. The work, the job I was in, I realized, okay, it's time for me to take some next steps. So I really felt like it was
Mm,
the right moment where I needed to evaluate and look at myself, where I would usually distract, where I would blame others, where I would divert. It was all that was left was for me to sit there and evaluate myself. And as you know, accurate self assessment is almost impossible. And that's why I felt like I needed to bring a coach in,
hmm, hmm.
someone like you to help me, and then somebody to kind of help me diagnose and kind of dive into all those feelings and kind of talk them out.
Man, super powerful, dude. Super powerful. Thank you for sharing, man. And I remember having those conversations with you, and those times of just, in this phase, you're just kind of like frustrated
Yeah.
because you don't know what to do. You don't know where to turn. You actually know the answer, but you don't want to accept it. And
Yeah, it's
finally,
almost like you need another person to tell you, even though you kind of know what you need to do. It's like the encouragement of another person gives you faith and courage that you maybe didn't have by yourself.
absolutely, absolutely. And the tenets of high impact fasting is what you've experienced. In fact, a lot of it comes from our experience together. Because when when I walk with you every day through that process, it let me know that what I was experiencing for myself wasn't just a kind of like a what do you call that? Kind of like a survey of one, like data of one person, but everybody that I knew was kind of going through these same things and would go through these same phases, right? And so I learned that once we get clear, once we clear out the baggage and the stuff that's clogging us up, we get very clear on where we're going. We set our intentions on going there. and then we're courageous enough to start taking those steps like you did, whether you're starting a fast, hiring a coach, or whatever it is, right? All of a sudden you start to feel the confidence after a while to say, you know what, I can do something about this. In fact, I'm the only person in my life that could do something about this. So instead of continuing to go through these loops of not taking not taking ownership for my life, let me go ahead and do something. If it don't work out, it doesn't work out. And if it does work out, then great. Right. Um, yeah, man. That's super powerful. Super powerful. Third stage, spiritual connection. And so you start to get very, very clear in your process when you're going through your fast. And these things, I used to put a time frame on it, like, week 1, week 2, week 3. But then what I started to find is that as I continued embarking on my fasting journey, I would find I would hit those stages at different times. In fact, I would get to the spiritual connection much sooner in my latter years of fasting than I had in the previous years. And then I started to fine tune the way that I would connect with people who wanted me to coach them through fasting. And I would find these people getting through those 3 phases even sooner. Like they didn't have to wait weeks to get to a place of spiritual connection. Like they were literally going through the physical stuff, going through the mental stuff, and then the mental and emotional stuff, and then getting to that place of spiritual connection. I mean, within days or a week or so. And they were having some aha moments out of this world, some downloads that, they those times that they knew what they needed to do, but just didn't have the courage to do it or the confidence to do it. They were having those, but then they were having these moments of downloads and clarity where it was like, oh man, I had never thought of this stuff before. And it's exactly what I needed to think about in order to move to this next phase. In your place of spiritual connection, walk us through kind of like what that process was like. You started talking about a little bit where you like, I had peace of mind and I had clarity and I had, so walk us through a little bit more in depth about what that was like for you.
Yeah, so for me, I think a lot of it was, with the binge eating, let's say, it was justification of bad behavior. So I wasn't getting to the root of the issue because I wasn't connecting spiritually with God, with myself. So it was like, well, so and so did this to me, so therefore I'll go eat junk food. So and so
Mm-hmm.
did this, so I'll go do this or that. So
Mm-hmm.
really what it started doing was it started connecting me with my true identity. I think it's easy for us to struggle and connect with, to label ourselves as our repetitive struggle. So I struggle with this, therefore this is who I am.
Wow.
And that's not really the truth. The way I see it is God calls us to something higher, and it's really up to us to see that and believe it. And you told me something about, if I forget how you said it, maybe you could say it again, but something in regards to, if you keep telling people who you are, they're going to believe you. So if your view is that you're not a good person, you're not capable of this or that, you're not a leader, you're a follower, you're just floating aimlessly through life with no vision, no purpose, no passion, then guess what? People around you are going to start to believe that, and you're believing it. So it kind of awoke that side of me. I just kind of like a little bit of that, the man, the leader, the beast. It's like
Mm.
inside of us, like, dude, like David killed the giant, man. Like, what are you thinking? Like, it's not about size. It's not about strength. It's not about accolades. It's about what you're called to be, what you're created to be. So when you get into a state of fasting, man, you start to connect with that. And it's almost like this healthy version of conviction. It's not guilt or condemnation, but
Mm-hmm.
it's like an understanding of what you're called to. It's something higher. So I started feeling that. It was like a conviction, like I can't hang out in these low places anymore. And
Mm.
that's not to criticize anyone else that's there. The goal is that they could come up to their higher place as well. But I can't stay there anymore. I feel an uncomfortability being in there. So for me, I started feeling all those feelings. Like, what are you doing, man? Like, I was changing adult diapers at 30 years old, I think, is when I called you for $10 an hour. And, I was working with special needs community. I'd lived in a drug and alcohol rehab for 3 years. And I was like a drug counselor in that for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that's where God had me during those times. But there was a part of me that just felt limited to that. Like, this is where I'm staying forever. And it's like I started waking up and saying, like, no, you can go start a business. You can really take some steps forward. So, here I am 5 years later with a business that flips houses and it's doing well. I make a living doing that. I'm making music and putting albums out, and
Mhm.
I'm very connected in the church that I'm at here, and helping others. There's never a time where there's not somebody I'm mentoring, and there's not somebody that's mentoring me. So those
Mhm.
were things that were not existent in my life at that time. And not to be too reductive, but fasting was the catalyst to me tapping into some of those things.
Man, listen here. That if that ain't, reason enough to just really just do it, as Nike would say, just do it, right? And of course, I always share with people that fasting. There's a group of people. There's some people who fasting is not for, right? And I always had to put that caveat out there. If you had certain health related issues, or if you had certain eating disorders or anything like that, then there's another way, right? There's another way to be coached through something to get prepared for a fast. And so we need to put that in there. But if you're at that place and you're just like ready, like that is what needs to happen. And here's what I found is that once you go through all of those things and you start to experience that expansion in yourself, whenever we go back and revert back to old things, we feel like a shell of ourselves because we know what we're capable of. We know our potential. And the longer we stay in that place of reverting back to what we used to be, because you've grown so much, it's never going to be the same. You could try to stay there, but it becomes a very unhappy place very fast, right? And when I was sharing with you that this was just a few months ago, man, you better than anybody else, right? And so people have this preconceived notion when they meet us already of who we are. And this preconceived notion normally is a greater being than that's in their mind. Oh, look at who they are, look at what they've done, look at what they have, look at what, and we walk around with the self-esteem issues internally. They don't see that. We walk around with the insecurities and they don't see that. And eventually people will see exactly how you see yourself because you will show them how you see yourself. They'll start to, if you walk around with this essence about yourself, not a inflated personality or ego, but the real you, talking about the you that understands your value, understands your worth, that understands your personal power, that's in tune with your purpose and your vision. If the real you walks around and connect with people, they'll desire to come more into your world. But if your insecurities and those things that speak louder than your value, that if you're allowing those things to speak louder than your value, eventually people will see you exactly how you see yourself. If you see yourself as not worthy, if you see yourself as uh, I I just can't get things done, if you see yourself as a person that is not desirable, people will see that. People will see that. So people are going to see, we're going to show people exactly how we see ourselves eventually. Right. And so that's the challenge. I think that's the overarching challenge of fasting, is to get to a place where we see ourselves exactly like God sees us.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. When we get to a place that we see ourselves exactly like God sees us. You mentioned and it's David killed a giant, right? But he was passed over for that anointing, for that thing. He was passed over for all of his brothers who looked more apart. They looked like they, was the man. If you go read the scriptures, right? They looked like they were supposed to be the next in line, but they wasn't. And David knew who he was. He knew who he was. He was so in tune with his job and his, not just his job, his work, right? Tending to the sheep and being with God. Like, he was so in tune with it, right? That when he went down to watch what was going on with the war, and everybody was scared. Everybody was afraid of this giant Philistine. David started to say, well, hold on, wait a minute. Why? Not only why is everybody scared of this guy when we got God? Like, right? We got God, right? One. But David understood his worth so much at that point, and you would never think this about, the shepherd boy, but David started renegotiating contracts. He started saying, hold on, to the person that's going to kill him, what do they get? And he gets to marry the king's daughter. He gets this and he gets that. He said, hold on, just to be clear, one more time. He gets what if he kills this dude? And they would say it again, because in the gathering of 2 or 3 witnesses, right? Let all things be done. So he gets this and he gets that. He say less. I got you. No, I don't need that. I don't need your stuff. This is what I'm used to. Let me go about it this way. And before you know it, it was done. It was a done deal. It was a done deal. And even though the world, regardless of what we've gone through, what we've experienced coming up, the world may not see you as that champion. Like, nobody seen David as that champion until it was time. Then all of a sudden, when it's time, it's time. And so it's time, my friends. It's time. It's time for you all to take the leap of faith. It's time for you to experience life on another level. And, not just in fasting, but in all facets of life. And so, of course, we have some things that are going to be coming up very, very soon. Next month in February, we're going to launch our very first fasting challenge, a 9-day fasting challenge for anybody that wants to join. And we're going to do 3 days of pre-fasting meals. We're going to do 3 days of water fasting and then 3 days of post-fasting meals. And we're going to open that challenge up to everybody that wants to be a part of it. There's going to be a entry fee, of course. We'll open up that on the launch date is going to be coming up next week, but I'll start talking about that soon. And man, it's going to be one of the most powerful experiences that you've ever encountered. I think one of the things that I am very good at, I would probably say one of the best in the world at, is helping people get from their fasting experience and not just through their fasting experiences. And that's what I've learned about myself, because that's what it did for me. I remember being in that place where I was lost and just couldn't. I was at one of my lowest points in life and just couldn't figure it out. And came across this book that inspired me to start fasting. And I remember the power that I left out of that fast with, and the breakthroughs that started happening in my life. And after that, it was a done deal. I wasn't the same after that, which is why I just kept going every single year. And then time after time again, regardless of who I'm working with, the breakthroughs that happen in people's lives have been immense. And so I thank you, my man, David, for being a willing vessel to embark on that journey, to be a person that was willing to accept that call and fed up in life and just saying, you know what, this is what I need to do, because now your story goes out and impacts so many other people. I can't tell you how many people I've shared your story with over the years, my man. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for helping me as well, man. And to everyone watching this that, might be a little concerned about doing it or feel like you can't fast, I promise you can. If you're looking for some inspiration and next step forward to hear from God on a deeper level, start by, just doing something like this, because, it's impossible to be selfish and happy at the same time.
Mm,
It's impossible to be selfish and content at the same time. So just taking away something from yourself, not that it's selfish to eat, but just saying, I'm truly going to sacrifice in this moment something that I want in order to, get next steps, get clarity, get vision for my life, to get my health in order. It's going to do nothing but help you. So I just want to encourage you, if you think you can't, you can. And it might be a process. I think, Tommy, before I had called you, I think I tried to fast maybe 10 times individually. And
mm,
the longest I'd ever gotten was maybe 5 days.
hmm.
So, it took having someone to kind of push me that extra step. But, if you guys try and it doesn't work, just keep trying. Keep
Hmm.
trying and remember the purpose of the fast. And then having somebody like Tommy that can help you remember those things as you're going through them. It's a big thing because you're not always in your most clear mind the first couple days. So, yeah.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Absolutely, absolutely. And you might not be ready to go 30 days. You might not even be ready to go like 21 days. I just had a friend finish up 21 days today or yesterday. They had her first meal this morning. Text me the pictures of her first meal.
Oh,
But
I bet that felt good.
oh
Yeah.
yeah, oh yeah. And but you might not be ready for all of that, right? But I promise you, you could go 3. You could go 3. And that's where it starts, right? And once you know that you could do that, even if it's 24 hours, once you know that you could do that, then you will give yourself permission to do a little bit more, right? And so super excited about everything. So I talked about the challenge. We have the first book I'm writing is coming out very, very soon. I'm looking to launch it in March. It is called Fasting is a Superpower, the ultimate guide to high impact fasting. And I'm finishing up the final touches on that thing. When I tell you that thing is just a work of art, it's beautiful, beautiful content. And I'm so excited about it. So be on the lookout for that. And I know, my man David, you have some projects that you're working on, man. How can people connect with you or support you in what you do?
Yeah, right now you can find any of my music on soundcloud.com/David Killed the Giant. And March 3rd, I'll be releasing 4 new albums, all different genres,
Nice.
on all major streaming platforms. So be sure to check that out. But if you want to check me out now, we could probably put a link to my SoundCloud in the description. So,
Love it. Love it. Will do. Well, that's it, folks. I appreciate you joining. If you have any questions, comments, thoughts, man, please put them in the comments below. Man, give David all the love for this incredible interview in the comments below and the value that he brought, man. Just shut it down. Just shut it down. So cool, brother. Thank you so much, man. And we will definitely have to get together for another interview.
yeah, my pleasure, man. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. All right. Hold 1 second.